And here with their thoughts, host of the Doug Collins podcast, Colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserves, and former Georgia Congressman Doug Collins, plus political analyst Mark Halperin. Great to have you both with us here. Doug, I'm going to start with you. Leo, of course, shared multiple things there in that report, one of which I think stands out the most to me, that pending Republican GOP debate that former President Trump has said, I'm not going to go. I might hold a rally instead, and it's going to be boring if I'm not there. Your thoughts?
It's classic Donald Trump. I mean, he is going to command the show no matter where he is at. If he's on the debate stage, he will. If he's not on the debate stage, the key instance for me, though, will be is if Donald Trump doesn't go to the debate, there's been a lot of discussion, will Ron DeSantis go to the debate? And, I think tending right now he probably would. But again, the question becomes for his advisors and others, what do you gain? What do you lose, especially being on a stage that large? In 2016, we saw the field be this large or a little bit larger, and everything just sort of got muddled. It was where actually Donald Trump stood out. So I think there's a lot of reasons to go to the debate, but I think Donald Trump is so far ahead, and then with the Republican base, he feels like it's to his best advantage probably not to go. The question will be, will others follow?
I want to go back to this echelon poll that says 48% of the swing state voters want President Trump. That's a 7-point lead over President Biden. That is going to widen the gap here, but we do know that there were 4 states that were very important to President Biden in 2020: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, 5 of them actually. Mark, how do you see this playing out? Could we see these states flip in the next election?
Well, look, there's only 8 states that really at this point can matter in terms of picking the president. The gap between those 8 and the 9th state is massive. And so you've named probably the most important 5. And Democrats like to say that between January 6th and abortion, Donald Trump can't win those states. I don't think the data supports the notion that he can't win those states. And so you'll see a lot of discussion about electability, particularly from the DeSantis camp. But Donald Trump right now has data to suggest he can win. And that's going to undermine in a pretty serious way this so-called electability argument.
And speaking of electability, Doug, I want to go back to what is breaking at this hour, that former Trump aide Walt Nauta has pled not guilty in the documents case to literally helping President Trump move and store those documents. Your thoughts on that? Anything that stands out to you there?
Not really. I mean, I think it was expected he would, plead that way. And I think this is going to, again, lead us up to the pretrial and how this actually will go forward. So, again, not a surprise here. It'll be interesting to see how they proceed on this. I want to go back to one thing Mark said. Mark's spot on about these supposed swing states. I want to just lift up one in particular, and that's Georgia. I think Georgia has had a couple of anomalies in the last couple of elections. Everything else in Georgia has been Republican. We've had a couple of Senate races that went sideways. I would argue for different reasons. I think in a race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in Georgia, I would tend to give Georgia would fall back in line, I think, to the Republican side. Be very close, but I think that would be it. So I think Mark's point about this electability issue is the further this goes along, even with these outside things like this plea today, is sort of falling to the wayside unless something else happens.
Another story that we're following today, the deadline for the U.S. Attorney David Weiss. He has to explain to Jim Jordan his previous letter that he sent forward there, asking the committee who had the ultimate authority over the Hunter Biden investigation. Now, we do know that Weiss, in a previous response, that he's not at liberty to provide the materials that they seek. Mark, do you expect that he's going to meet this deadline? What do you expect is going to happen come 5 o'clock today?
I doubt it. Look, we're in a very unusual situation. The U.S. Attorney, Mr. Weiss, the Attorney General, Mr. Garland, if they're not telling the truth, they're engaged in a pretty broad effort to defraud the American people, to lie to the American people about something of great public interest. So on the one hand, it's hard to believe they would try to get away with that. On the other hand, they've been pretty lawyerly in their answers and not as forthcoming as a lot of suspicious people would like them to be.
Yeah, and Doug, before we wrap up, the word that comes to mind that we constantly repeat here on Newsmax and Beyond is transparency. And it seems that this particular administration doesn't have any, nor do the 3-letter agencies associated with them. At any point, do you think they're going to realize, hey, the American public just wants to know what's actually happening? Or are they going to continue to assume, and this is how I view it, that Americans are going to forget about it, that they're stupid, that they don't really need to know or even care?
Well, they seem to believe the latter of what you just said, but I think is some pretty soon, even mainstream media, and they're starting to report this with the Hunter Biden situation, with other things going on, is starting to get more and more traction. But until it does, no, the numbers are not moving. What is really disturbing here is what I talked about right after the Hunter Biden plea, when the Department of Justice came out and said, we're still ongoing investigation. That key phrase right there tells me that DOJ is not going to cooperate with Congress on anything regarding this investigation, and they're going to use the hiding of it's an ongoing investigation to keep from it. But American people are trying to catch on. You're seeing that in the numbers. I believe that's one of the reasons why Joe Biden's numbers are so soft, even among Democrats, but in the general election poll numbers that we're seeing as well.
Well, we wait for that 5 p.m. deadline to see what happens, and it's coming here in a few hours, so we'll wait. Congressman, thank you so much. Mark Halperin, appreciate your insight as well. Appreciate you both being here.